Hello, and welcome to our presentation of the Volkswagen emissions scandal. To begin, we will go over a brief history of the company. Volkswagen was founded in 1937 by Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Originally, the company was known as Society for the Preparation of the Deutschen Volkswagens mbH, which was later changed to Volkswagen Work, or the People's Car Company. Hitler wanted the Germans to be able to produce a fast yet affordable car that would cost less than $140. It was of his own thoughts that Hitler wanted to establish a German car company. However, he could not do it by himself. Hitler would utilize the expertise of the Austrian designer Ferdinand Porsche to design the first Volkswagen vehicle. At first, sales in the U.S. were slow. In 1959, the advertising agency Doyle Dane Bernbach launched a campaign which named the Volkswagen vehicle the Beetle, and spinning the small size as an advantage to consumers. Over the next several years, VW became the top-selling auto import in the United States. In 1960, the German government sold 60% of Volkswagen stock to the public, and as a result, essentially denationalizing the VW brand. In 2006, Volkswagen decided to engineer a diesel engine that would meet the strict U.S. emissions requirements. Much to the engineers' chagrin, they were not able to actually create the clean diesel engine that VW had marketed. When the VW engineers realized that they did not have the capability to produce a clean diesel engine, they decided that they would begin the process of defeating the U.S. emissions system, under the guidance of Jans Hodler and Richard Doornkamp. According to a Department of Justice press release, when the co-conspirators realized that they could not design a diesel engine that would both meet the stricter nitrogen oxide emission standards and attract significant customer demand in the U.S. market, they decided that they would use a software function to cheat standard U.S. emissions tests. So how did the engineers attempt to beat the system? If the vehicle detected that it was being tested on a dynamometer, it ran in one mode to pass the emissions test, and if it was just a person driving the vehicle, it would run in a different mode that produced excessive nitrogen oxide, which we will go into more detail later in the presentation. Who was involved? There are 6 VW executives that were named in the criminal case against Volkswagen. These folks were deemed instrumental with either their knowledge of or lack of ethics and morals within the case. Heinz Jacob Nasser served as the head of engine development from October 2011 until July 2013, after which he was the head of brand development and served on the management board until September 2015. Bernd Gottwies was a supervisor within the quality management and product safety from 2007 until October 2014. Jürgen Peter has worked in the VW quality management and product safety group since 1990. From March 2015 until July 2015, Peter was one of the VW liaisons between the regulatory agencies and VW. Jans Hodler was head of engine development for VW from May 2007 to March 2011. Richard Doornkamp was the head of VW's engine development after-treatment department in Wolfsburg, Germany from 2003 to December 2013. From 2006 until 2013, Doornkamp led a team of engineers that developed the first diesel engine that was designed to meet the new, tougher emission standards in the United States. Hodler and Doornkamp were named as to knowing about the engineers' practices in attempting to defeat the U.S. emission system. Oliver Schmidt was the general manager in charge of the Environment and Engineering Office, located in Auburn Hills, Michigan, from 2012 through 2015. From February 2015 through September 2015, Schmidt returned to VW headquarters to work directly for Nasser, including work on emissions issues. As ironic as it may seem, Schmidt was actually transferred back to Germany by VW, He then decided to come back to the U.S. and vacation with his wife. When he boarded his return flight in Florida bound for Germany, he was arrested before he could leave the United States. According to the New York Times, 5 of the 6 mentioned employees have been formally charged in the U.S., but only Oliver Schmidt has been arrested. Schmidt was sentenced to 7 years in prison for his role in the scandal. Driving is one of our daily activities that affects the air we breathe the most. To cope with local air pollution issues from cars, strict emission standards have been adopted in many countries, and more will follow. As a result, modern diesel vehicles are equipped with technology such as catalysts and particle filters in order to reduce emissions of nitrogen oxides and particle matter. In the case of particle emissions, these technologies have been very efficient. However, in the case of nitrogen oxide, this has not been the case. Many of the vehicles you see every day can have very different emissions than what is measured in the laboratory. This has been known for a while, but it became much more of an issue when it was discovered that Volkswagen had put software in their engine system in order to manipulate emission testings. This resulted in emissions up to 40 times higher than the legal limit in the U.S. in some cases, making this clearly a concern for air quality and public health, said Janet McCabe, acting air quality chief for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. We already know that very high nitrogen oxide emissions have very harmful health effects. But nitrogen oxide is also important from a climate perspective. From the climate perspective, issues have been raised referencing the Paris Agreement and Clean Air Act. The Paris Agreement brings all nations into a common cause to undertake ambitious efforts to combat climate change and adapt to its effects. The agreement also provides for enhanced transparency of action and support through a robust transparency framework. The Clean Air Act is a comprehensive federal law that regulates air emissions from stationary and mobile sources. Among other things, this law authorizes the EPA to establish national ambient air quality standards to protect public health and public welfare and to regulate emissions of hazardous air pollutants. The Environmental Protection Agency accused the German automaker of a violation in regard to both acts. Diesel vehicle exhaust affects the climate in a complex manner involving competing effects over different timescales. Nitrogen oxide emissions leads to an increase in the tropospheric ozone concentration for a short period of time, thus causing a warming effect, but reduces the methane concentration, causing a cooling effect, which operates on a decadal timescale, which is further superimposed by a more persisting and in part even century-scale warming caused by carbon dioxide. Furthermore, there are aerosols such as black carbon and organic carbon that influence the short-term climate response. While nitrogen oxide pollution contributes to atmospheric levels, exposure to these pollutants has been linked to a range of serious health effects, including increased asthma attacks and other respiratory illnesses. For the particular VW case, Human Health Studies estimated that the diesel vehicles with sophisticated software deployed have caused or will have caused a small but positive number of deaths in the United States. According to a peer-reviewed study published in the Environmental Research Letters, it was estimated that due to the excess pollution produced by vehicles equipped with the Volkswagen defeat device, between 2008 and 2015, approximately 60 premature deaths were caused. The number of deaths was reached by looking at the amount of extra pollution emitted between 2008 and 2015 by the VW cars fitted with the defeat devices. Of the 60 deaths, particulate pollution makes up 87%, and the remaining 13% is due to ozone. Most of the deaths were estimated to have occurred on the east and west coasts of the United States. As well as the premature deaths, researchers estimated that the extra pollution from VW cars caused around 31 cases of chronic bronchitis, 34 hospital admissions for respiratory and cardiac issues, and 120,000 days when people had to restrict their physical activity as a result. The economic cost of the health impacts was put at $100 million. And the final environmental effect, smog. Nitrogen oxides form smog, that murky, dirty air that makes it hard to see and for some people to breathe, but also amplify a deadlier, larger problem, tiny particles of soot. Numerous medical studies show those tiny particles cause about 50,000 deaths a year in the United States, mostly from heart problems. Nitrogen oxides can travel hundreds of miles, so pollution spewed in Pittsburgh can be felt on the East Coast. Experts calculate how much pollution costs society by looking at the value of lost lives. In this case, the lost lives, valued at $8.6 million apiece, overwhelm other costs, such as lost workdays or hospital costs. Environmental engineering professors calculated that the overall annual cost of the extra pollutants from the VW diesels ranged from $40 million to over $70 million. Volkswagen's actions in intentionally utilizing defeat devices and pursuing means to continue use of these devices after they were discovered had an undeniable impact on the social and socioeconomic factors of business. These impacts will be analyzed in respect to both external and internal outcomes in the following slides. VW's pursuit of success through the corrupt means of its defeat devices resulted in social impacts both internal and external to its corporate boundaries. Internally, this scandal was initially driven by the intentional and deliberate decision to adopt dishonest business practices in order to achieve success at any cost. Mistakes happen, which is lamentable, but falsehoods don't just happen. They require intent. And in this case, all members of the VW Corporation played a role in developing the corruption that led to this scandal. VW senior officials established a strict corporate autocracy that pursued infeasible objectives with no tolerance for failure, that implied expectations of illicit means if honest means would not allow success, and that demanded a hermetic seal of secrecy in order to maintain the company's competitive advantage. VW's code of conduct put the highest emphasis on Volkswagen's reputation. The greatest sin from the code's viewpoint is damaging the company. The second is deviating from rule-based norms. There is little encouragement of independent, honest, and forthright thought. This code of conduct demanded that every employee put the success of the company ahead of their own ethical urges. The only real counter to a corrupt code is engineers with the mettle to challenge its use. Good engineering practice avoids single points of failure. The corrupted ethics of VW brought to light by this scandal absolutely served as a single point of failure, one that their engineers could have avoided had they maintained honesty in the development of their product, rather than falling themselves prey to the cyclic of dishonesty and deceit established by VW's code of conduct. As a result, corrosion of character was essentially an epidemic within VW's corporate culture at all levels, each requiring its own layer of dishonesty. Volkswagen advertised itself as a producer of high-performance, clean air-preserving vehicles. In reality, this was a blatant lie. The harm to their reputation and credibility amongst its customer base was definitely made, and VW has made promises and payouts in order to mitigate the complete destruction of its customer base. These mitigations targeted their customers differently in regard to their geographic locations, however. There were, generally, 20% profit losses in the months after the scandal. Sales only got marginally better as VW made motions to regain customers' trust in the United States and London. However, sales held fairly steady in diesel-driven countries like Ireland. Different cultures may influence the degree to which bluffing or misrepresentation is deemed acceptable. This is particularly true in terms of the analysis of the aftermath of the defeat device scandal on the analysis of VW's continued customer base. In the United States and countries with similarly strict regulations to meet Clean Air Act emission levels, VW took a significant hit to its customer base, whereas in European countries, with greater utilization of diesel vehicles and therefore less enforcement of emission regulations, took a far less significant hit to their customer loyalty. Therefore, more action was required on VW's part to preserve their reputation within countries with greater emphasis on emissions and environmental efforts. The cost of VW's reputation and credibility amongst their customer base was grossly significant. Never again will they be the trusted leader of clean air emission vehicles because the marketplace does not easily forget. As Wertheim states in his essay on lying in business, it is one thing to lie in a situation where we will never see the other person again, but the potential consequences of lying take on added serious potential costs when we are involving people with whom we have long-term relationships. In looking at the economic impact of the diesel emission scandal, we will first look at the potential positive economic benefit that Volkswagen could have seen, followed by the negative economic impact that the scandal had on Volkswagen, other companies, and society in general. Volkswagen sales had been struggling in the United States. In 2014, their sales had dropped 10% from the previous year to 366,970 vehicles. Despite this slump, they had very ambitious sales goals of 1 million Audi and Volkswagen vehicles by 2018. In order to increase sales, Volkswagen knew that they were competing with a predominantly gas-powered vehicle market, but chose to stick with their area of expertise with the diesel-powered models. Since winning the first ever Green Car of the Year awarded to a diesel vehicle at the 2008 Los Angeles Auto Show, Volkswagen had sold approximately 475,000 of the affected vehicles in the United States. After the scandal became public, the Volkswagen stock plunged as much as 23%, from 161.35 euros to 125.40 euros per share, wiping out approximately $17.6 billion in market value. Volkswagen has admitted that about 11 million vehicles worldwide were fitted with the defeat devices. This has not only led to approximately 500,000 cars being recalled in the United States, but an additional 8.5 million cars being recalled in Europe. The U.S. recall alone will cost Volkswagen an estimate of more than $7.4 billion. Considering that the U.S. recall was just a fraction of the recall that took place in Europe, the overall recall cost to Volkswagen was considerably higher. Of the nearly 500,000 recalled vehicles in the United States, Volkswagen has been housing nearly 300,000 vehicles at 37 different secure storage facilities around the United States. Volkswagen will also face a number of stiff fines from the United States government. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency could seek fines of up to $37,500 for each vehicle that was in violation of the federal clean air rules, along with another $3,750 for each piece of equipment that was used to cheat the emissions test, for a total that could be upward of $18 billion. All told, according to estimates, the net present value of the cost of the entire Dieselgate scandal for Volkswagen, including government fines and settlements, private settlements, recall expenses, and future loss of sales, could be up to $34.5 billion. Unfortunately, the economic impact of the diesel emission scandal does not stop with Volkswagen. The solid perception that Germany's automotive industry and engineering held was also hurt, as reflected by an initial 10% drop in BMW stock prices and a 13% drop in Daimler stock prices. The automotive sector is the largest industry sector in Germany, accounting for roughly 1/5 of the net German industry revenue and about 2% of the net workforce in the country. Considering the negative worldwide perception the scandal has had on Volkswagen specifically and on German cars in general, exports could suffer. In 2014, about 77% of cars produced in Germany were exported into the international markets. Even a small decline in worldwide sales could have a dramatic trickle-down effect on the German employment figures and an economic impact on the vast number of suppliers to the German car industry. Analysis has shown that Volkswagen's deceptive practice, which resulted in emissions 10 to 40 times the allowable limits while driving, could exceed $100 million in economic cost due to health damages. An EPA study estimated that 1 ton of nitrogen oxide can be expected to lead to 0.00085 deaths, based on a commonly used function associating mortality rates. This means that the amount of nitrous oxide from the Volkswagen scandal, which is estimated between 10,000 and 40,000 tons in the U.S. alone, would lead to an expected 60 deaths, along with other corresponding health problems. Considering that the number of vehicles affected in the United States is just a small fraction of those affected worldwide, the economic cost due to health damages and the number of potential deaths caused by this pollution is astronomical. In conclusion, there were several lapses of risk management that led to Volkswagen's diminishing brand value. Among them are Volkswagen's corporate culture, the market risk from competition in the auto industry, and the confidentiality risk from the internal discussion of using defeat devices. Contrarily, the organizations that environmentally regulate the emissions testing also suffered from failures in risk management. Their lack of control and oversight on risks associated with the security of research data, the duration of testing, and the testing methodology that was initially employed prolonged the sale of harmful vehicles. New EPA standards created a challenge to maintain diesel engine performance while staying on budget. Volkswagen's corporate culture promoted high production goals, aggressive sales, and short activity durations which stressed engineers to cheat. In 2005, a group of Volkswagen engineers decided to cheat on emissions testing because they couldn't find a technical solution within the company's time frame and budget to build diesel engines that would meet emission standards. This incident perpetuated further cheating in improving the defeat device's software. High-level executives made the decision to not install nitrogen oxide traps, which are priced around $500, into their vehicles to catch the toxic emissions. Furthermore, Robert Borsche, GmbH, admitted to giving Volkswagen cheat software and warned the automaker against real-world driving conditions. A key reason engineers may have thought that they could get away with the deception is because locating the defeat device in a vehicle is nearly impossible if you don't know where to look. The cheat software was buried under millions of layers of code. The scandal is likely to change Volkswagen's culture and has also altered the way environmental regulators around the world conduct testing. With the research results, Volkswagen manipulatively coerced environmental regulators into scope dependencies while they improved iterations of the defeat device software. The amount of testing, the activity duration of the testing, and the trial frequency allowed Volkswagen to continuously update their defeat device software. The crisis has shown many regulators how to locate defeat devices. Environmental regulators increase their awareness to improve controls on their processes. For instance, the Californian regulator, CARB, had over 60 months of interaction with Volkswagen. Researchers wanted to give Volkswagen the benefit of the doubt. However, Volkswagen executives saw this as an opportunity to continuously mislead researchers with technical explanations, which prolonged the sale and concealment of Volkswagen defeat devices. The initial recall was to update software to improve the defeat devices, in which pollution controls were shut off when the steering wheel was moved. The sophistication of the defeat device software implies a substantial number of Volkswagen associates were involved. Market risks and competition in the auto industry played a factor in the implementation of the defeat devices. Other German automakers used similar programming and software to cheat United States emission tests. The automaker also did not fully assess the confidentiality risks when discussing the intentional deceit. Numerous emails and communications of high-level executives were recovered that revealed orders to destroy information about the defeat device technology. Since the news of the scandal, regulatory parties have updated their methodologies for emission testing. Moreover, researchers are now aware that more controls on the accessibility of real-time results are needed. Settlements and negative headlines have diminished Volkswagen's brand equity and consumer perception. Brand equity is the subjective value that consumers assess a company's goods. Stock prices are down over 30%. Volkswagen agreed to fix or buy back approximately 500,000 diesel vehicles that were sold in the United States, starting with vehicles with the model year 2009. Furthermore, the investigation revealed a PowerPoint presentation that was prepared in 2006 that detailed how the automaker could cheat emission tests in the United States. The evidence in that presentation corroborates with other emails and memos that portray a corporate culture of cheating. Michael Horn knew of cheating as of 2014 and lied before Congress about Volkswagen's intentional conduct. Although Volkswagen established a clean diesel TDI factory in Chattanooga, Tennessee, their primary business objective has always been to increase sales. The company never made an internal commitment for social responsibility. Additionally, manipulative marketing was used to deceive American consumers. Volkswagen utilized a European loophole to integrate the defeat device into their vehicles by stating that pollution controls were adjusted to protect engine performance. Volkswagen was aware of a potential solution: nitrogen oxide traps. However, the automaker did not integrate this equipment into their models because of cost and the activity duration to install the piece. This concludes our presentation. We have worked to cover what we consider the most relevant topics in regards to this scandal: the environmental, socioeconomic, and economic impacts, as well as where risk management could have been improved. Thank you.